13 years after Robin Gibb's death, the silence surrounding his private battles is finally beginning to crack. For so long, his children protected what they knew, holding back stories that the public only guessed at. But time has a way of demanding truth, especially when the weight of it becomes too heavy to keep inside. Today, they're no longer shielding the man behind the music. They're explaining him. The early years and the beginning of a fractured legend. Before anyone spoke about the rumors or the scandals, Robin Hugh Gibb was simply a child born on December 22, 1949 in the Jane Crookall maternity home on the Isle of Man, arriving just 35 minutes before his fraternal twin Maurice. Their parents, Hugh and Barbara Gibb, were loving, musical, and restless, moving their children from the Isle of Man to Manchester, then across the world to Redcliffe, Australia. Those early years were chaotic. The boys were notorious for their mischief, small fires, pranks, and childish stunts that worried adults, but hinted at the intense creativity growing inside them. By the mid-1950s, the Gibb brothers discovered the one thing capable of calming all that energy: harmony. Barry, Robin, and Maurice began sitting together, trying to match the voices of the Everly brothers and Paul Anka, instinctively slipping into the tightly layered vocals that would later define a generation. In 1955, they formed the Rattlesnakes, performing at Manchester halls with a rawness that made people look twice. When two members left, they reformed as We Johnny Hayes and the Blue Cats. And in 1958, in a decision that would change their lives, the family boarded a ship to Australia, unknowingly traveling alongside a young Red Simons, another future musician. In Australia, the brothers found the new beginning they needed. By 1960, they performed on television for the first time on Strictly for Moderns, singing Time Is Passing By. Even at 10 years old, Robin's tremolo, soft, quivering, strangely mature, stood out. It wasn't long before Festival Records signed them in the mid-1960s, leading to early hits and rising fame. And in 1965, when Robin sang lead on I Don't Think It's Funny, people noticed something unmistakable. This wasn't a child's voice anymore. It was the voice that decades later, the world would mourn. But behind the success brewing in their teenage years, the first cracks had already begun forming. Fame was coming fast, and the brothers were not prepared for what it would cost. Love, chaos, and the first great fall. As the Bee Gees exploded in the late 1960s, Robin Gibb's personal life grew just as intense but far less stable. In 1968, at only 18 years old, he married Molly Hullis, secretary to their manager, Robert Stigwood. Their bond was forged not in glamour, but in trauma. The two were together during the Hither Green rail crash, a catastrophic train derailment that killed nearly 50 people and injured many more. Surviving that tragedy created a connection that felt unbreakable at the time. For a few years, it seemed like Robin had everything: fame, love, and the beginnings of a future that looked steady on the surface. But fame is rarely gentle. By the early 1970s, Robin was living mostly in the United States, while Molly stayed in the UK, raising their children, Spencer and Melissa. The constant distance eroded their marriage. Robin's growing emotional instability, fueled by stress, sleeplessness, and the pressures of touring, created deeper fractures. He drifted into stimulant use, amphetamine and methadone, drugs common among musicians needing to stay awake through endless recording sessions. Friends later recalled that Robin's moods became unpredictable, bursts of hyperactivity followed by crashes of exhaustion, long nights of paranoia, and a growing fear that people, including Molly and her lawyers, were conspiring against him. By 1980, after years of living separate lives, Molly divorced him. The breakup quickly turned bitter. Robin violated a court order by publicly discussing their marriage, and the consequences were severe. He was jailed for 14 days in 1983. It was a humiliating moment for a man at the peak of international fame and one of the first public signs that his internal battles were far darker than fans imagined. But even as his personal world collapsed, Robin sought comfort in new beginnings. In 1985, he married Dwina Murphy Gibb, an artist and writer whose spiritual beliefs and creativity mirrored his own. She became both his partner and collaborator, helping rebuild the stability he had lost. Yet even this new union carried its own storms, ones the world would not learn about until many years later. Betrayals, secrets, and the rumors that never died. For years, the public could only guess what was happening inside Robin Gibb's home. His second marriage to Dwina Murphy Gibb, beginning in 1985, appeared peaceful from the outside. Two creative souls building a life between Miami, the Isle of Man, and their historic Oxfordshire home, the Prebendal. But beneath the surface, the arrangement was far from traditional. Only after Robin's death would the truth come out. Dwina and Robin had an open marriage, a secret the world never suspected during his lifetime. And within that openness came one of the most sensational rumors that had circulated for years: the affair. Around 2001, when Robin was nearing 50, he began a long-term relationship with Claire Young, a housekeeper in the Gibb household. The relationship lasted several years, and in 2008, Claire gave birth to Robin's daughter, Snow. To outsiders, it looked like a scandal on the edge of disaster. But what no one knew at the time was that Edwina already understood and had accepted what was happening. Her later comments were calm, almost serene. She was not a jealous person, and Claire and Snow were taken care of. Her words confirmed what fans had only whispered about for decades. Yet, even with Edwina's acceptance, the situation created tension within the family. Robin struggled to balance the emotional chaos of two households, the loyalty he felt to his older children, and the guilt he carried over a relationship that had slipped far beyond discretion. His desire for harmony, both musical and personal, was constantly at war with choices that complicated every part of his life. The turmoil didn't stop there. Robin faced professional strain as well. Tension with Barry Gibb simmered over who should sing lead, dating all the way back to the success of Massachusetts in 1967. For Robin, the growing dominance of Barry, both vocally and creatively, felt like a razor. That frustration fueled their break in 1969. And even after reuniting in 1970, old resentments lingered. Fans heard only flawless harmony. But behind the microphones, the brothers clashed over control, identity, and the right to be heard. Those unresolved emotions, combined with Robin's personal struggles, laid the foundation for the rumors that never faded. Rumors his children are now finally willing to address. Feuds, loss, and a family torn apart. The Bee Gees' harmonies were legendary, but behind them lived a family defined by conflict as much as love. The first major fracture came in 1969 when Robin temporarily left the group over creative control. The wounds healed, but never fully disappeared. Then came the blow no one could prepare for, the death of Maurice Gibb in 2003. Robin's twin and the brother who had always acted as the emotional mediator between Barry and Robin. Maurice's death shattered the fragile balance that held the family together. In the immediate aftermath, Barry, already grieving, became furious when he believed Maurice's widow, Yvonne, and her relatives were planning a tribute album for profit rather than love. He felt excluded, blindsided. The disagreement escalated into a public feud with Barry openly expressing that Maurice's legacy was being exploited. And there, caught in the middle, was Robin. He wanted desperately to honor his twin, but the conflict between Barry and Yvonne's side made every step painful. Rumors spread that Robin continued working on Bee Gees-related projects while Barry stepped back, hurt and disillusioned. What the public saw was a rift over an album. What Robin's children later revealed was that beneath that argument lay something deeper, a struggle over grief, identity, and who had the right to represent the Bee Gees after Maurice was gone. The divide between Barry and Robin only grew over the next decade. By the early 2000s, they were barely speaking. And tragically, Robin never told Barry that he had cancer. Barry later admitted he learned of the illness only when Robin was already dying, something that devastated him beyond words. For Barry, the silence was confusing. For Robin, it was a reflection of years of emotional distance and unhealed wounds. Robin's children now confirm what fans long suspected. The brothers loved each other deeply, but fame, competition, and loss built invisible walls that none of them ever truly managed to tear down. And when Robin slipped into his final battle, those unresolved tensions still hung between them. Heavy, lingering, and heartbreaking. The final battle and the miracle no one can forget. By 2011, Robin Gibb was fighting a war he could no longer hide. The diagnosis was devastating. Colon cancer already spreading to his liver. Yet, even as his body weakened, he projected hope. In interviews, he insisted he would recover. His voice was thinner, his frame fragile, but the optimism never left him. Those close to him later admitted that he clung to that belief with a determination that bordered on defiance. Treatment was brutal. Surgeries, rounds of chemotherapy, and constant pain began to consume him. But Robin refused to stop working. Even while attached to hospital drips, he continued composing the Titanic Requiem with his son RJ, a symphonic tribute to the 100th anniversary of the Titanic sinking. For Robin, the project became more than music. It was a metaphor for his own struggle, endurance, tragedy, and the human will to keep moving forward even as the world collapses around you. By April 2012, the illness overwhelmed his body. He contracted pneumonia and slipped into a coma, and doctors quietly warned the family that there was nothing left to do. Edwina, RJ, and loved ones gathered at his bedside, preparing for the end. But then, in a moment that his children still describe with disbelief, the impossible happened. As Dwina played music from the Titanic Requiem in the room, Robin's fingers began to twitch. Moments later, his eyes opened. He smiled. Doctors called it a medical anomaly. RJ called it a miracle. For a brief window of days, Robin was present again, talking softly, humming melodies, and telling his family he wanted to return to the stage. Even weakened and fading, he was still thinking about music, still dreaming about performing, still fighting in the only way he knew how. But the miracle couldn't last. His kidneys failed, his liver followed, and the disease took what little strength remained. On May 20, 2012, surrounded by Dwina, RJ, and those who loved him most, Robin slipped away at 62. According to Dwina, he died quietly, smiling, his hand in hers, unafraid, at peace, and full of music until the very end. To his children, that moment defined who he truly was. Gentle, hopeful, and relentless in spirit. A man who refused to let pain silence him. After the silence, what his children are finally revealing. In the years after Robin Gibb's death, his family stayed quiet, protecting his privacy the same way they always had. But as time passed, his children, especially RJ Gibb, began speaking publicly, not to expose him, but to explain him. And in doing so, they confirmed many of the rumors that had followed Robin for decades, filling in the missing pieces of a life that was far more complicated than fans ever saw. One of the first revelations came from Dwina, who calmly shared that she and Robin had lived in an open marriage, a truth almost no one knew during his lifetime. She explained that the affair with Claire Young and the birth of Snow in 2008 were not betrayals in the way people assumed Snow was provided for, and Claire had been cared for. Dwina's voice was steady, without bitterness. Her honesty confirmed what had long been rumored, but never proven. The Gibb household operated under rules the public never knew existed. Then came the details about Robin's estate. His will left his estimated £26 million primarily to Dwina, Spencer, Melissa, and RJ. Snow, though not listed as a main beneficiary, was privately provided for. Something the family didn't want sensationalized or turned into conflict. They revealed that they had intentionally handled the matter discreetly to avoid the kind of legal and emotional battles that destroyed other celebrity families. Most powerful of all were RJ's memories of his father's final moments. He described holding Robin's head and whispering, "We love you," as his father took his last breaths. He shared stories without second